They're all going with the same story. We start with the Telegraph here, which runs with nations turn to say farewell as the Queen now lies in state. And there's the image there in Westminster Hall. We move on to The Guardian, which goes with people disappeared. iZoom recalls horror of occupation. And of course, amid the pageantry, the Queen takes place in history. Financial Times next, and they run with Kwarteng set to end cap on bankers' bonus, and royal family escorts Queen in procession to Westminster Hall. The Mirror has Pride and the Pain. Family mourn amid scenes of pageantry as Queen's lying in state begins. The Times, this is a wraparound front cover that goes to the front and the back, and they have grief is the price we pay for love, her crown and glory. And then the Daily Express, your nation stands with you, Mum. And finally, we have the Metro, which leads with our jewel, her crown. And those were your front pages. So we're going to kick off with a story from the front page of the Telegraph. And this is, of course, what most of the papers are covering tomorrow, principally, which is Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II lying in state, Leo. I believe it's for 5 days, is that right?
5 days. They're talking about possibly extending it because so many people from all around the country and all around the world want to come and pay their respects. There's going to be huge queues. People are already queuing up to file past and see her and pay respects.
Yes. Nick, will you be making a visit, do you think, down to Westminster Hall?
I'm not going to. I must say, I'm impressed that people come out all day, and it just shows how much people love the Queen. I love the Queen, but I just couldn't go out into the crowds and stand there all day. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But I'm amazed how many people are.
Well, it's nice weather today.
Well, the weather helps.
But I think, isn't a lot of this about, we've seen the reaction across the country. Various people have reacted in different ways, but there's an overall sense of sort of grief, isn't there? A lot of people agree, even though they didn't know her, they loved what she represented, and, this is a kind of way for them to bring that to a close and to sort of, to address however they're feeling about it.
I think it's hit people who didn't even realise it. I know people like Darius Davies, comedian, who's never been a royalist, but he's genuinely gutted about the Queen because, she represents that continuity. She's a real link to the past. She's, served for 70 years.
Yep.
And, so she's the link to our wartime generation, our best generation.
So I think that's very interesting, isn't it? That because she has obviously been around for 15 prime ministers.
Yeah.
She's been here from the time of Churchill through the war. It is that
7
sense
fridge
of
freezers.
Yeah, exactly. There is that sense of continuity.
Yeah.
And that's also, I think, what people are grieving, isn't it? The recognition that life moves on, that we have to move to a different era. That's part of it, surely, isn't it?
I said the other night on here, she's been there for my entire life and almost my parents' entire lifespan as well, since she came in 1952. But also, a note on the tradition of it, I saw a tweet saying, oh, this is over the top, criticising all the tradition. I like the tradition, I like that we keep that going. Well, what are we going to do? Do it on Zoom, you know what I mean? It's like this, the tradition's actually important and is a key part of it, so that people being grumpy about it, I disagree completely.
OK, so we move on now. Thursday's Daily Mail, they have the royal family all accompanied the Queen as she left Buckingham Palace for the final time today. Yeah,
they've said Royals Solemn March, King Charles, Prince Andrew, Princess Anne and William and Harry lead historic 2:22 p.m. procession as Queen Elizabeth II is taken on her last journey from Buckingham Palace. And it's all about this 2:22 and the significance of that. And there's been various speculation about why that is. And people have said various reasons. But actually, it seems to be to do with the time. It's to do with arriving at 3 p.m. at the correct time.
Yes.
And people say, well, it's just simply about that. But it is a bit more complicated than that because I saw a thing that said it's to do with 75 drum beats. In the past, they would measure it by drum. Yeah, it's not in this piece. I found that elsewhere. It's measured by the number of drum beats it would take between...
So this is interesting. I mean, this article here that we've got regarding this 2:22 time, there's all sorts of theories that they're suggesting. There are things such as it has a significance because when her father, King George VI, died, after his death, the bells tolled 56 times at Windsor, one for each year of his life, and ended at 2:22. But then there's some odd ones here, that it might have a Christian numerological significance, and that 222 has represents unity and love in the Bible. And go on, sorry, Lou.
Well, people love seeing, patterns or seeing some hidden meaning in times and dates and all the rest of it. You've seen it with, letters of the alphabet and all the sort of Da Vinci Code type things.
But isn't it just that basically they have to get to Westminster Hall by 3 o'clock?
Yeah. I don't think there's any signal to, or any hidden message.
Okay, well, no, I doubt that as well. Let's move on to the Daily Star. Thursday's Daily Star has the royal brothers being reunited in grief. How convincing is that, Leo?
Yeah, well, Princess Anne's son, Peter Phillips, who actually walked between Prince William and Prince Harry at Prince Philip's funeral in Windsor in April 2021 as a sort of buffer between the two princes, because obviously Prince Harry and Prince William are feuding, or have been feuding for the past few years. But they've sort of put that to one side, and they won't need this guy, Peter Phillips, who apparently is one of the favourites. Yes. Who's a cousin. They won't need him to sort of keep them apart. I think they both, obviously, they both realise the gravity of the situation.
Yes.
So they're treating it with the appropriate decorum and, not continuing their feud at the Queen's funeral.
Absolutely, but they had Peter Phillips as a buffer. They were saying here previously, and now they're. But have they really reconciled? I mean, how can we possibly know?
Well, I think they'll put it to one side for this.
Yes.
This is obviously, probably the most momentous occasion.
Of course.
Yeah. So they're not going to. They're not going to, have relatively petty feuds.
So what do we think about this, Nick? I mean, should they be reconciled? A lot of people are suggesting that this is what inevitably they must do at this time, but the rift is there for a reason.
Of course it is, and I hope they can reconcile, though I'm sceptical, especially as Harry's book seems to apparently still be coming out, which we might talk about later.
Yes.
He's delayed it, but he hasn't cancelled it. And I saw a video today on Twitter, I'm not sure when the video is from, but Owen Jones had liked it, which is always a warning sign.
Yeah, it's always a bad sign.
And in it, Harry was talking about how, he was in a bubble in the royal family, and you think, well, of course it's a bubble.
Yeah.
And then he was talking about, again, which he's talked about many times, Meghan's alleged sort of suicidal feelings, and he's attacking the royal family. So it's hard to see how you do recover from that. The one part I did sympathise with was the media harassment. Of course, that's obviously going to be very unpleasant. It's bad enough, I've had friends who are being attacked by the tabloids. Imagine when you're at that level. So I do have some sympathy for that, but ultimately, very broadly, William represents the duty and tradition path, and Harry, of course, represents the other path that you can go down. And obviously it's not perfect because William perhaps is a bit modernising, maybe even a bit woke himself. But broadly, that is...
Not to the same extent.
Not to the same extent. So that's why that is broadly the disparity.
Well, also, there's this feeling, isn't there, that Harry caused a lot of grief for his grandmother in those final years, and I don't think we can get away from that. Yeah,
and I think out of all the members of the royal family, definitely the one that caused her the most grief.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else. So I think it's nice to see them put their feud to one side.
Yeah.
But we know it's still there. We know it's going to come back. I mean, apart from anything else, it's how they make their money. Harry and Meghan now make their money through biographies, interviews with Oprah, where they wash their dirty laundry in the open and badmouth the royal family.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to be coming back to that in a later story, but we're going to move on to Thursday's Independent now, and these are the much anticipated queues, Leo.
Yeah, so apparently the queues for the Queen's lying in state for anybody who wants to visit, and there's a lot of people who've come from all around the world. They're flying in. The queues could stretch to 10 miles. So the route for members of the public waiting to pay their respects to Her Majesty during the 4 days her coffin will rest in Westminster Hall stretches nearly 7 miles over the Thames and along the South Bank to Southwark Park. But they've got zigzagging channels to fit more people in.
Yeah.
So it increases the maximum length to 10 miles. And the Department for Culture has now consulted with behavioural scientists to try and judge how tightly packed and slow-moving the queues are likely to be in order to make preparations for how to deal, which is what's obviously going to be a huge logistical operation. I wish they would put this amount of effort into other areas of government, but this is what they're doing.
And Nick, isn't this a logistical nightmare just in terms of security? I mean, there have been lots of talk about how Republicans are going to want to. If they're going to create a problem or cause any harm, this is how they'll do it. So there's going to be a lot of security issues here.
Yeah, and what I listened to a report that even said that people who are sort of obsessed with the royal family, are also a problem because they like them too much. But yeah, we covered the other day, they're going to have the SAS out, rooftop snipers. So yeah, a massive security operation. Also, it strikes me that 1,000 marshals, stewards and volunteers, and it's just incredible, 779 professional stewards. You sort of realise the amount of people, around this one person, the Queen, which of course Republicans would have a big problem with, but I like, because it's the old hierarchies.
Well,
and also
they wouldn't have fewer people around the president.
Good point, good point.
Yeah.
And I also know they're going to have 500 portable toilets.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. Oh, so they've thought of everything.
They've thought of everything.
Well, they have to, don't they?
Yeah.
It's such a huge event.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on now to Thursday's Guardian. They've got a story here about Keir Starmer reminding us of that this is a period of mourning, but this is perhaps an odd sentiment to come from Keir Starmer.
Yeah, this is very interesting. It's Keir Starmer. Protesters should respect those mourning Queen. And Starmer does say the right thing. He's very sort of proper, isn't he? The other day he tweeted, "God save the King." But I couldn't help but note, if he was to win the general election, he would be our first openly atheist Prime Minister.
Interesting.
Another new sort of symbolic low for the country. But he has come out and said that protesters should be respectful. Much like his sort of stance on women and things, it's a kind of delicate dance for him, because he's saying, I think if people have spent a long time waiting to come forward to have a moment as the coffin goes past, I think respect that. Now the question is, how do you respect while protesting? So it's an oxymoron on the face of it.
But he is a fence sitter, Keir Starmer. I mean, that's what he's known for.
He has to be,
isn't he?
because of the nature of balancing the left of his party versus trying to win actual elections.
Yeah.
So, and I also know on the topic here of protests that we were criticised on Twitter by Ash Sarkar, who said, "Oh, I can't wait for the GBNews people to condemn meaning the arrest of the woman who said abolish monarchy with her sign." Then, of course, we immediately all did defend it, because there's not many people you'd find who would think that person should actually be arrested.
It's a strange one, that, isn't it? Because, all the free speech advocates that I know will say that the police shouldn't be arresting people for holding signs up, however distasteful people might find it. But this assumption by activists, left-wing activists, that free speech advocates, they actually don't care about free speech when it comes to the monarchy, is actually not true.
Yeah,
it's bizarre.
Except I do think that I believe in free speech, apart from when it's something I don't agree with.
Is that right?
Or something that's going to annoy someone. So, no, I think it shows that left-wing activists, they're fighting against an imagined version of the right. They've got these imaginary boogeymen that they're criticising and fighting against.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although I've decided to actually be pro-strict treason laws now, just to provide balance, because but yeah, obviously ridiculous.
Well, I mean, so this is the question when it comes to these sorts of. I mean, it's interesting that Keir Starmer has intervened and said, called for respect. Not that anyone's going to listen to him particularly, but obviously, die-hard Republicans at this time are going to want to make a statement. That's something that's going to happen, and as long as they do it peacefully, then that's that's what living in a free society is all about, surely.
But yeah, I mean, I do think on the one hand, Republicans can make their case, but I haven't heard from Republicans in the time leading. Why have they picked this moment, the moment of our death to?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, fair enough, have a protest, but it's like when you see Westboro Baptist Church, with placards outside the funeral of a military
soldier or something. Yeah,
a soldier. It's disgusting. It's distasteful, and it's just not the right time. Whatever you think of the royal family or the system of monarchy, don't be screaming abuse at people who've just lost a family member.
Yeah, they don't come across well.
Yeah,
do they? Let's put it that
doesn't
way.
win me over, and I'm the sort of person that would be surely a target market for being won over to any. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we'll move on now to an article in Thursday's Telegraph. And this is interesting, Leo, because this is requests for an extended Queen's journey for funeral procession. Well, how would that work?
So they would make the route longer for our final procession, and it's because so many people have come to the capital to pay respect. So they want to make sure that everybody can see her, because they've done modelling, and apparently 350,000 mourners could miss the.
But surely, I mean, we were just talking about the security issue, and I know that they've been going through sweeping the bushes and all these kinds of things for potential incendiary devices. It's already been a very difficult operation. To extend it at this late notice, does that not just invite problems?
I mean, I wouldn't have thought it's a particular target for. I mean, I know in the past, the IRA have targeted royal members of the royal family. I think the Queen's second cousin, Lord Mountbatten, was killed by the IRA. But that's settled now.
I think that was the INLA.
Oh, right.
But it was
Irish Republicans,
yeah.
What's interesting is the Princess Diana's funeral was almost the preparation for this, so they know this kind of thing can happen. It says the route taken by Princess Diana at the funeral in 1997 was lengthened at the last minute due to the outpouring of grief at her death. So that was actually changed at the last minute as well.
Well, maybe it should be. Actually, no, sorry, it wasn't the INLA. It was the IRA. INLA killed Airy Neve.
Oh, right.
But, you know, they're all much of a muchness, aren't they?
Right.
The thing here, though, I just don't think it is practical at this point, but I do understand the sentiment.
Yeah.
The fact that more and more people want to be there. It's the same with her lying in state. I think people want to feel that they have got involved with this moment in history.
Yeah.
Because it is so obviously a kind of pivotal moment that we will never experience again.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about grief and about showing respect. I think it's also about feeling involved.
Yeah, and history, and, you know,
This was the argument.
history.
Sorry, this was the argument some people made to keep the football going. That would have been a big moment for a lot of people who aren't actually going to go down to this. So I wasn't sure about that, but I definitely think people want to have some sort of moment to mark it.
Yeah, I mean, I think cancelling certain things like the Centre Parks thing sounded ridiculous. They were going to kick everybody out for a day.
Yeah, when they were already there.
I think they've pretty much backtracked on that quite quickly because that's silly.
Yeah.
But there's also these debates going on about the pubs and whether the pubs should be closed on the day of the funeral. And there were arguments earlier on Dan's show about this, and actually for some people that's a really good way because it's not just mourning, is it?
Yeah.
It's also celebration.
It's the wake, yeah. And we associate pubs with funerals.
Yeah. So maybe, what do you think about that, Nick? Do you think they should close everything?
I spoke to Toby Young about this. We were debating it because I felt that although, look, if cricket was going to go ahead and rugby, which was what happened, then obviously football should. But there is a case for cancelling them because people, you have to recognise the gravity of it in some ways. Then again, with pubs, I think it's another question mark, and we might get onto it later. But the NHS suddenly cancelling appointments and stuff, and that's where it gets seemingly, counterproductive.
But it all comes back to this thing of people wanting to be involved. I mean, even at a football match, you could have the minute silence, and you could feel like you're
anthem as well,
right?
Yeah.
And you could feel like you're involved in something that relates to this. And I suppose that's why they want to extend this journey, but whether they can do that logistically, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, on to Thursday's Sun now, and an update to the invitation list for the funeral. Nick?
Yes, invite denied. 3 more countries are banned from attending Her Majesty's State funeral on Monday. This is quite interesting because they've already banned, Belarus and a couple of others, and now they've added Syria, Venezuela and Afghanistan.
Okay.
Were they going to come?
I'm not sure if they were going to come, but they've been banned. Meanwhile, North Korea and Nicaragua join Iran in having been invited only at ambassadorial level. I think North Korea's been a little bit lucky there to even get in on the ambassadorial level.
How have they made these decisions about who gets to come and who...
A friend of mine went to Afghanistan recently. He said it wasn't too bad. Mind you, all my friends are, of course, extreme reactionaries, but he said it was not so bad. But you have to wonder. So it's Russia, Belarus, Myanmar are already banned. Now they've added Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan. Yeah, and it's difficult to know the criteria, although I should point out that in Iran, they state-run TV compared the Queen to Adolf Hitler. So that's obviously disgusting, especially disgusting when her father stood against Hitler as king during the war. Particularly disgusting. So they should be on the list.
Well, but they have been invited. Iran...
ambassadorial.
At
yes,
ambassadorial
right. They should get a
so
full ban. They should get a full ban.
Yeah, Argentina as well. I saw a video of them celebrating. And obviously there's some enmity between Argentina and the UK because we beat them in a war.
Well, there would be that. But, I mean, it's not... The decisions about who gets to be invited will not be based on how the nation's media are reacting or anything like that. This would have been made a long time ago, I would have presumed.
Well, then why are they having to update it, then?
That's a very good point. Well, I haven't been let in on it, to be honest. But you're right, Nick, you and I should be able to make these decisions.
Yeah.
To be honest. Anyway, Thursday's Daily Mail now. Telling us exactly where we can watch the state funeral on Monday. Leo?
So if you can't make it to the procession in London, more than 150 cinemas across the country will screen the Queen's funeral on Monday, with some also showing her procession to Westminster Hall this afternoon. And also, it's also going to be widely shown on television, I should imagine.
Well, then why the need for the cinema?
I guess it's the communal experience, like we were talking about before. It's nice.
But that's why I think you should have the pubs. Because the pubs can have the big screen, and that would make a lot more sense to me.
No, it's a good point, but this is what the cinema was sort of originally intended as, wasn't it? It was a big public event, and it was a big event back in the day. So I do like this. It sort of harks back to the time when the cinema sort of meant something in that way. Although certain snacks are banned, did you mention that popcorn and things like that?
Well, I would assume so.
That's part of the article, so I have to report it, Andrew.
I think it's because they're sort of they're too celebratory.
Yeah, and it would be obviously distasteful, people making a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Also, popcorn's horrible.
That's not-
Anyway,
Cinema popcorn is.
That was absolutely dreadful. Anyway, on to Thursday's Metro. The Queen still breaking records, Nick.
Yeah, the flight carrying Queen Elizabeth's coffin becomes the most tracked in history. This is a sort of meeting of ancient tradition and high tech, because the Royal Air Force flight that carried Queen Elizabeth II's coffin from Edinburgh to London became the most tracked in history, and it was over 5 million people tracked the flight on Flight Trader 24. And the previous record was apparently Nancy Pelosi's flight to Taiwan last month, where nearly 2.2 million tuned in. They probably tuned in because there was an element of danger.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
And to see what happened, rather than this is pure respect. And it does show that the Queen is loved around the globe and that people are fascinated with this.
There is something quite symbolically interesting, isn't there, Leo, about the fact that she died at Balmoral?
Yeah.
The fact that the procession then ends up going throughout the whole territory in one way or another. And particularly in Scotland, you know, where obviously the call for a Scottish second referendum would suggest a kind of rift.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Queen, and it reminds us that the Queen was really the glue that held the kingdom together. You know, she was loved in Scotland, whereas perhaps other royals aren't as respected as much, and certainly other parts of Britain, parts of Boris Johnson, people like that aren't as respected.
Because even the sort of die-hard Scottish nationalists, I think the impression I get is they had respect for her as an individual, even if they might not appreciate the institution or what it represents, whatever. They had a respect for her, and particularly in Balmoral, of course, where the people knew her.
Yeah.
They'd see her around the town, they'd see her in the shops and that kind of thing.
She loved Balmoral and loved Scotland as well. In fact, I heard a funny anecdote about, so she was out walking in the hills near Balmoral with her assistant, or whatever he's called.
Yeah.
And they came across a couple of American tourists and got chatting to them, and the American tourists were like, I heard the Queen lives around here, have you ever met her? And the Queen said, well, I've never met her technically, but this guy has. Yes. And so her assistant says, I met the Queen, she's got a cracking sense of humour. And then the American tourists were like, oh my God, can we get a photo with you? And gave the camera to the Queen to take a photo of them with the person who'd met the Queen.
Did she tell them before they left? That...
she didn't, I heard.
No, and then
the other person did.
She had a photo taken, she had her photo taken with them. So obviously when they went back, their friends would say, that's the actual Queen. Look at the stamp. See how it's got the same...
How could you not know? I mean, her face is that she's the most photographed woman in the world. It's on the money that you spend.
I guess when she's...
Americans, right.
When she's got the headscarf on and stuff.
Maybe. Yeah, fair enough. Let's cut them some slack there. Telegraph now. Delays to book publications for Harry. Now, Leo, this is interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, we've all been talking about this memoir, what it would contain.
Yeah.
But now it's going to be delayed because I suppose it's going to be... it's distasteful, is that it?
Yeah, I should imagine that's why. So Prince Harry's memoir has been delayed until next year. It was going to be published in time for your Christmas stockings this year. But sadly, you're going to have to find something else to stick in there. But it's long cast a shadow over the royal family amid fears it'll be used to settle scores. Obviously, there's been a long-standing feud between him and Meghan and the royal family. They've called him racist and all this sort of stuff. So, yeah, he's doing the right thing, waiting a bit before he trashes the royal family and the Queen.
Hasn't this been teased as a kind of tell-all?
Yeah.
Right, and that implies, doesn't it, that it's going to be pretty damning. Yeah. Is he going to take this opportunity, maybe, if you're going to delay publication, to rewrite some of the more incendiary passages? Is that just me being naive? Yeah,
well, if that video is anything to go by, and I don't know when that was filmed, it's going to be incredibly toxic. So, yeah, obviously delaying it is at least... It's better than releasing it now, obviously, but you do wonder, will he rewrite passages? I mean, I said probably not. You imagine not. The other thing to note, by the way, is that the Spotify podcast that Meghan does is put on hold for 6 weeks, so we'll all miss that.
She's only done like one.
I think
episode.
she did. Has she done one or two?
Yeah,
she did one with Serena Williams.
Yeah, where she spoke for most of it.
She spoke just about herself for all of it. So, OK, well, I don't think it's any great shame that podcast isn't on.
They're incentivized to make it as incendiary and as toxic as possible because they're clinging on to the vestiges of celebrity.
You don't think it's possible that even now, that this idea of him reconciling with his brother might actually, in the wake of something, the death of the Queen, he might rethink? It might give him some perspective and think, well, maybe having a go at this family...
He'll rethink, but then he'll think, I need some money.
Yeah,
Right.
There is still hope for Harry. I think there is still good in him, but I do wonder if he'll ever come back. Because what's notable is that normally when you get older, you get a bit more of a sense of the importance of duty versus your own selfish whims.
Yeah.
Whereas Harry's sort of gone the other way because he was in the military. He did have a sense of duty,
Yeah.
and unfortunately he's gone the other way. So I worry.
Interesting. OK, so now we're going to turn away momentarily from the late Queen, and we're going to look at the Times, which reports on this update on the Ukrainian offensive. Nick, a lot has happened over the past few days, and I think a lot of people have missed some key developments here.
Yeah, we've missed it because, of course, but this is an important story we should cover. And it is, of course, good news in a sense. It's Ukraine liberates 150,000 from Russian occupation. So this was this counterattack we talked about the other day, a historic counterattack. People are saying this will be studied because it was such a great counteroffensive move. And this has now freed up 150,000 Ukrainians from Russian occupation.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's the main point. And it's what we said the other day, really, that a smaller army can win if they're more motivated.
Yeah.
But they're a bigger army.
Oh, you're saying actually a bigger army as well?
Oh, Ukraine is a bigger army than in terms of manpower.
But it isn't just to do with that, is it, Leo? I mean, it is to do with morale.
Yeah.
And, you know, and do the Russian troops really want to be fighting this war in the way that the Ukrainian troops, they've got a lot... You know, they've got a lot more motivation.
Yeah, obviously, Ukrainian troops are fighting. They're fighting for their land. They're fighting for their women and their children. Whereas Russia are fighting. They don't know why. They've been told they didn't even know they were going into war.
Yeah.
You know, they've been, and a lot of them are either from the Wagner group, they're mercenaries, or they're. I mean, they're recruiting from prisons because you know Putin doesn't want to have mass mobilization. He doesn't want to draft civilians into his army. So they're struggling. They're struggling for bodies. They've lost 50,000 troops already. So he's struggling to actually fill the roles.
And Ukraine is saying Russians use you as cannon fodder. Your life doesn't mean anything for them. You don't need this war. Surrender to Ukraine. And it must be quite hard to resist that for all the reasons you've mentioned. If you are a Russian soldier.
Yeah.
And a lot of this has come about because of from the West, weapons that have come from the West and support that's come from the West.
Yeah.
And now, of course, they're calling for more support. I mean, could this be the turning point? Could this be the end of the war? Is it, you know, and what will happen to Putin now?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's apparently a possible assassination attempt on Putin today with a possible bomb aimed at his limo.
Right.
So
coming from inside Russia.
Inside Russia, yeah. So, but I mean, there have been other attacks, there have been other assassinations in
also
Russia.
You've got some generals now speaking out against his strategy.
And in St. Petersburg, politicians were speaking out, which previously would never be done because you're going straight to the gulag.
Yes.
But now they're openly doing it. He's being openly criticised on television as well, which considering he controls the media. So we're at this critical point where it can either escalate wildly with tactical nuclear weapons used in Ukraine, or Putin can try and roll back and salvage something.
That's interesting, isn't it? This question of nuclear weapons, because a lot of people have been talking about the fear that he's going to be like a cornered rat, and he's going to lash out and he could do something crazy. But then other people have sort of countered that by suggesting that he's so sort of personality and ego-driven that the idea of using nuclear weapons, he will know that will be the end of him.
Yeah.
If he does that, that will be the end of him. But is he that kind of guy, Nick, that it's just all or nothing?
I personally think we always have to be very wary of psychoanalyzing Putin. I don't think people, when people say, oh, he's mad or he's a psychopath, I think he's mad. I think he's been very calculating. He has all these sanctions set up. He has all this strangling of the gas pipeline and all this. Russia, as I've said it before, but they plan out wars. This one doesn't seem to have been as well planned as some, but they plan out way...
What plan was this?
Well, I know, you mean, exactly. They come up with... apparently they war game things. War with the US, not with Ukraine, 50 years in advance. And I always say they'll look at assassinations, they'll look at economic sanctions, they'll look at every possible kinetic war and everything else. This, obviously something's gone wrong here, but I always just think the idea that Putin's mad or a psycho is...
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it's too easy an explanation, isn't it, when you start doing that? And also we don't know. When
it comes to nuclear weapons, it's obviously so unprecedented. Who knows what anyone would do?
But I think anybody who's in power for that length of time, they become victims of their own hubris and ego. And, it seems to be like... But at the same time, even though Ukraine has reclaimed all this territory, it's now left troops in that territory quite exposed to any Russian counter attacks. And in fact, today Russia bombed the Karachunovskaya dam, which then flooded the Inhulets River, which means bridges and pontoons have been taken away. So that's going to make it much more difficult for Ukraine to supply the troops that have gone into that territory.
Right. OK, well, sticking with tomorrow's Times, it looks like we've got some positive inflation news for once. This is strange, Leo.
Very mildly positive.
OK,
So,
I'll take that. Yeah. Given the current climate, let's take that.
So economists were expecting inflation to rise from 10.1% in July to 10.2%.
OK.
But it fell to 9.9% last
But look,
month.
that sounds paltry.
Yeah.
But actually, in the grand scheme of things, that is significant. And it's moving in the right direction, so that's...
It's a tiny, tiny little tinker. And also the retail price index, which is the one that affects you because that's the one that relates to what you can actually buy with your money,
yes,
was unchanged at 12.3%. And obviously, if you factor in housing and things like that, you know, we're talking like off the scale. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's not getting worse.
Yeah. What about Nick, the British government's measures that they're putting into place and the hope that this can put a ceiling on inflation? They're freezing electricity bills at £2,500 from October, £400 rebate for households. Is it going to make a difference?
I'm not enough of an economic expert to know if that price cap is actually going to make a difference. And does anyone really know these things when it comes to the economy? No one really hardly anyone predicted 2008. Can you really say that price cap will definitely, even if it does change, can you really prove that was the cause?
Yeah.
I struggle.
Economists never say. Well, they certainly admit that they're not good at predicting.
They never agree.
They never agree.
You get 10 economists, you get 10 different predictions. I wish climate change scientists would admit that they're the same.
I hate to be too humble, but when Andrew Bailey, head of the Bank of England, says he's helpless against inflation, I do wonder if I can solve it. But it is funny that this is good news, as you said, but then we're celebrating that it's falling to 9.9%, and I'm no expert. Still sounds quite high, doesn't it, to the layman?
Yeah, it's still much higher than we would want it to be. I will take that. Anyway, Thursday's Financial Times now. The EU have spoken out on rising prices. Nick?
Yeah, EU targets 140 billion euro from windfall taxes on energy companies. So they're planning to raise 140 billion in euros from energy companies' profits to soften the blow. Now, this is sort of a question really about the nature of free markets, I think, because their argument is that you shouldn't be able to profit like this from war. So you could say, well, what they're doing here is kind of socialist windfall tax, and it's over-regulating. But the thing is, war in itself, I suppose, is the state messing with the economy anyway by getting us into wars. So it kind of is an attempt to balance that. And the only thing is, I don't trust the EU to do it properly because I just tend to not trust them. But and not everyone agrees, of course. They've got to be approved by all the member states.
Yeah, well, that's going to be their problem, isn't it?
That's always the problem with the EU. I mean, if it works, it's supposed to be the benefit of being a member of the EU, obviously.
Yeah.
But Norway is already sceptical. Their Prime Minister is saying that...
That's because they're making so much money. They're making so much money off the... I mean, we should really just have a windfall tax on Norway. Yeah. And they should really offer. Yeah. If they've got any decency left, those Viking...
I don't think... Vikings, aren't they? Oh, no, they are.
I think they are, yeah.
They are.
I mean, you could say that Germany's arrogance sort of got them in this position in the first place, with their arrogance regarding their own gas, self-sufficiency.
We can rely on Putin. He'll always be a good guy to us.
Right.
I mean, Trump saw past that, and they laughed at him. It was ridiculous. Yeah. But yeah, normally I agree with you about free markets. Let them operate. It's incredibly important. The increase in prices is a valuable signal, and it means other people will rush to produce more energy. But unfortunately, the energy market doesn't really work like that. It takes 28 years for new gas fields to come online. So while everybody else is struggling and these energy companies are reaping the benefits, and when prices surge, the price of generating electricity from a wind farm or something like that doesn't surge. So they're getting this incredible extra bonanza of money, which really isn't that fair. So yeah, I hate to sound like Jeremy Corbyn, but yeah, a windfall tax.
I've always thought that you had a lot in common with Jeremy Corbyn. We're going to move on to The Guardian now, and The Guardian has a story about the importance of diversity. What's this, Nick?
This is very interesting. So Boris Johnson's former race advisor says Truss would not be PM without a diversity scheme, which sounds on the face of it like an insult to me, saying you only got it because of diversity.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's going to be upset by this, isn't she?
You would think. That sounds to me, I thought it was an insult, then I read on, and actually he's praising the diversity scheme, saying that, oh, look, it's good because it gave people like Liz Truss a chance. So this was...
Isn't it a backhanded compliment, though?
They should at least wait until see how she does before saying it's good.
I'm not sure he means it like that. This is Samuel Kazumu, and he said this stems from David Cameron's A-list thing that he came up with. Now, this is Cameron's idea in 2005 of deliberately, advocating diversity, making sure the candidates were suitably diverse. They came up with this list, about 150 people, and the majority majority were women. And so my problem with this is always, of course, that I believe in merit and
Yes.
I believe in sort of colourblind job promotion, except in the case of actors where you have to be acting a role, which is why I disagreed with some of the things about Lord of the Rings. But in general, I thought that we did, as let's say, either as Conservatives or as Liberals, believe in the idea of merit and the individual. And what I believe has happened in general, and when people like Cameron are doing this as an alleged Conservative, is that we've bought into sort of woke left identity politics premises, and we've said, OK, it's all right, we'll talk about Conservative things, but it has to be these people doing it. We've actually, identity politics has kind of come in under the table. We've accepted tacitly a lot of it without really.
I think definitely a lot of people on the right have accepted it more than they acknowledge.
Yeah.
But I suppose you can see why there might be some need for quotas and quota systems in a society which has, major ingrained sexism, racism, etc. But I suppose, Nick, you would suggest that we're not at that point anymore.
Well, there's that question, and of course, the racial disparity report said that we weren't in that so-called controversial report, and the one about systemic racism and all that. But the problem with it is, does it even work? Because, of course, it creates resentment. It creates suspicion that, they only got it because of this, which is what this person's saying here. Our Prime Minister now is a diversity hire, is his essential claim, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, so, Leah, wouldn't she be upset about this?
But I can see why they did it. I can see the power in doing it because they've outflanked Labour.
Yeah, they have.
Labour who rely on this identitarian, woke idea that, if you're an ethnic minority or if you're a woman or if you're some sort of, oppressed group, then vote for us because we're the woke left, so we'll look after you. And actually, all their leaders have been white men, and so they've outflanked them. But also, it gives people on the right the power to conduct policies that they wouldn't get away with if they were white men. Do you think Priti Patel would get away with the Rwanda plan if she looked like Nick?
But can I ask you about that diversity? Because I've seen a lot of comments from left-wing activists recently and commentators talking about how racist the Tory party is and how they basically disregard the fact that they promoted more ethnic minority people to cabinet positions and that there are so many ethnic minority people in the cabinet. And they have a real blind spot with this. You had Dr. Shola Moshogbamimu saying that Rishi Sunak lost because he wasn't white.
Yeah. And that Kemi Badenoch represented white supremacy.
Right, so how can this be that they have they just can't accept and say, actually, OK, given the evidence, the Tory party is no longer racist, and maybe we better turn our attention to Labour?
Yeah, but people like Dr. Shola could see racism in anything. They just see everything through these, they filter it through a prism of seeing racism in absolutely everything.
A glass of water. Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
Yes, you're right. It is tactically smart by Cameron and the Tories because it allows things like Liz Truss to point out that Starmer is from North London and a white man, whereas the Tories are onto their third female Prime Minister. But presumably there is a line where it becomes a Pyrrhic victory, where you just become completely left-wing to own the left. So there must be a line.
But I think people on the right, we love Suella Braverman, we love Kemi Badenoch, not because they're, diverse. I mean, you barely even notice.
Right.
Well,
that has to be pointed out to you.
That's the old dream of colour blindness, right?
But we love their policies.
That's true as well.
We are going to move on now to Thursday's Daily Mail. This is more about inclusivity efforts relating to sports this time, Leah.
Yes, so runners planning to take part in next year's London Marathon will be offered an option to identify themselves as non-binary for the first time. So it's as part of work to make the event truly inclusive. I mean, it already was inclusive. They could have just said what gender they really are, but now they can pretend they're a made-up gender.
Can you explain this to me? Because I thought that sports were segregated according to biological sex because men have an innate advantage.
Yeah.
Non-binary isn't a biological thing; it's an identity.
Yeah.
So do we have categories now for goths, for punks, for Marxists? What are we going to do?
People who dress in diving suits.
Well, yeah,
run the marathon.
It is hard to run a good marathon when you don't exist because, like you say, non-binary is not really a thing. But and also, yes, as my previous point, it's a woke premise, kind of getting its way in there into everything, into the marathon now. That,
I suppose there's no harm in it, but on the other hand, should we really be entertaining these kind of identitarian issues?
They said they're trying to make it more inclusive, but isn't the marathon already incredibly inclusive? You can basically dress up as a rhino and just sort of walk along for about 5 days.
Dressing up as a rhino is a great idea because it's a good excuse why you're not very good, because you've been rhino suit.
You dress up as anything, it takes you 2 weeks to complete. It's about as inclusive as it gets.
But they might be doing it to try and get away from people identifying as a gender that they're not, to get that advantage.
Oh, to ruin the women's sports.
Yeah, as we've seen in
that's interesting,
women's weightlifting, you get some lumpy bloke who's number 562 in the world, then, smashing world records.
Yep, could be that. OK, well, let's move on to the Mirror now. And the people have spoken, but the government have said no, Nick.
Yeah, this is a number 10 issues update on calls for an annual Queen bank holiday. There's 120,000 back petition. Yes, so but they have turned it down, as you say. So the idea is, could we have, of course, a bank holiday to commemorate the Queen every year, which is good in some ways because it does pay respect to the Queen. Then again, of course, it costs around 800 million per bank holiday is the estimate of how much it costs.
But Nick, is it not the case that we are behind other European countries?
Well, yeah, I was about to come to that because, crucially, France has 11, Spain has 14, but we have 8, but I think you don't want to be at the level of France, is what I would say. Or Spain. We want to be more productive we want to be less communist than France, more productive than Spain, no offence, and more productive than most people. That's what we want to do. We want to have about, I think 8's about right.
I think we should aim higher than more productive than Spain.
Well, yeah, but what baseline that is.
What do you think, Leo, about this? Because, I mean, in a sense, our longest living monarch.
Yeah.
It makes sense to have some kind of permanent commemoration.
Yeah, some people would say that, and obviously everybody likes a day off. I mean, we could compromise and just throw everyone out of Centre Parks once a year.
For me and people perhaps like us, I mean, bank holidays haven't actually meant anything to me for ages. It just means I get to the shop and it's already shut.
Yeah.
That's all because we work anyway.
I've never noticed a bank holiday. I don't know what they are really.
When you're self-employed, it's just, it makes you feel bitter.
Yeah. Well, OK, let's move on to Thursday's mail now. And these are, this is relating to the Queen's military moments.
That's right. So the royal family has celebrated the Queen's long-lasting and deeply personal relationship with the armed forces in a post on social media. This was on Instagram. The photos celebrate how the late monarch served in uniform in the auxiliary territorial service during the Second World War, and she obviously had an ongoing commitment to the armed forces and was much loved by them. And like I said earlier, she's one of the last links to that wartime generation who fought and suffered. And then went through, rationing and other deprivations after the war had finished. And, now we've grown up, basically spoilt brats, the generation since.
So, I mean, the Queen, Nick, is of particular significance for those who are in the armed forces.
Absolutely. I've been listening to them today, people from the armed forces, and they refer to her as the boss, because of course she is their boss, and it is this sense of duty that we're in danger of losing. They actually are prepared to die for the Queen, Queen and country, of course, and the Queen herself has a duty, and she believes she's chosen by God, and that's the hierarchy. So yeah, we are in danger of losing it. As I said, the only strange thing is that Prince Harry was in the armed forces, and then has lost that sense of duty
and served with distinction. I mean, and so did Prince Andrew.
Yes, but for the most part, obviously the armed forces love the Queen.
Let's move on now to the Daily Mail. This is an article about King George VI's influence on the Queen.
Very interesting article, this. A life shaped by her beloved papa. How the Queen was inspired by her father, George VI, who always made time for his little Lilibet. So if you've seen The King's Speech or if you've seen Darkest Hour, they both have excellent portrayals of George VI, who, of course, didn't think he was going to be king. His brother, Edward VIII, was going to be a king, and then he went off with Wallis Simpson. He wanted to marry Wallis Simpson from America, and this was obviously a scandal, so he decided to abdicate.
It was after a year. It was really short.
Very short.
He wasn't even crowned, was he? There wasn't a coronation, was it? It was before that.
It was that quick.
It was that quick.
So what's fascinating is it then fell to George VI, who didn't think he was going to do it, and similarly the Queen, in turn, didn't think she would have to. No one thought she would because she wouldn't be,
But wasn't she prepared? Because she was 39 to the throne, she was always prepared. There was always one eye on her eventually potentially becoming the monarch.
Yeah, there's that argument, but it was certainly much sooner than expected. It's a very interesting story. They were in Kenya. I'm sure people know they're in Kenya. They had to do duty because her father was too ill. Then she suddenly finds out. So it's a fascinating story, and I like the idea. Famously, George VI wasn't sure about it at first, but then he proved to be heroic. He was in the palace when it was being bombed by the Germans. He forged a great relationship with Churchill when they initially didn't get on. And what I like about it is it's people who, that you always hear that thing about anyone who wants to be president, you probably shouldn't do it. This is almost people who reluctantly did it, almost like the archetype of the hero's journey. They're like, I'm not sure I want this, and that's what makes them perfect for it.
I was talking to David Starkey about this on the show on Sunday, and he was saying that actually the abdication was a really good thing for the royal family, because ultimately you ended up with this couple, George and Elizabeth, who really fulfilled the role in a really impressive way, and were able to modernise the royal family in a way that made it compatible with a democratic society.
And I mean, talking of who's next in line, I believe is Prince Andrew next in line after Charles.
Yeah, they're even talking about how that could be a potential thing. But look, I mean, come on. And King Andrew, I mean, how would that go around the world, our reputation? That, you know, there's even some people talking about we should change the rules so that Anne...
No, we can't change the rules. No, I think King Andrew, I respect him. I think, honestly, he was born a prince and he lived the life of a prince, and I respect that.
Right. OK, well, look, let's move on now. And this one is about the important women in the Queen's life, Leo. This is in the Daily Mail.
Yes, so the Queen's circle of trust, from her beloved sister to her ladies-in-waiting, the monarch relied on a select number of women throughout her life. So it's quite a tight circle of friends upon which she could trust and rely. And even up until the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, she had a reduced selection of around 20 staff attending to her, you know, known as HMS Bubble. So obviously because of COVID restrictions, you can't have the full pomp and ceremony. And I think Charles is talking, or previously he's spoken of streamlining the sort of the royal family and the working royals and also the people. And he's already fired people, I believe.
You've got to wonder what a circle of trust with the Queen means, what it means to be the friend of the Queen. Not just, you know, because can you ever get over that recognition of who you're talking to? This is the Queen, you know, it's not like a mate.
But she seemed to be an incredibly down-to-earth person, and she's a good judge of character. You know, she kept Paul Burrell at arm's length, and I think she chose the right people around her. They advised her well, and certainly brought out the best in her.
Nick,
what I also took from this was the difficulty in being the sister of the Queen. You know, if you're Margaret, you know, she would sometimes mock her a little bit in public and things, because it must be really tough to be the sister of the Queen. But then again, I was thinking, and my favourite of this circle was Princess Anne once again, because she has this belief in the old ways. She doesn't like doing things in new ways. She believes in tradition, incredibly hardworking. 387 official events in 2001 Princess Anne attended. That is, I don't know how you even physically manage that. You've got to pack them in several a day.
Yeah.
And of course, I said the other night, there was even the attempted kidnapping of her in 1974. A guy with a gun comes and says, "Get out of the car." She says, "Not bloody likely." I mean, how cool is that? So Princess Anne is my favourite.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We're going to move on to the Daily Mail now. And the late Queen Elizabeth II seemed to be at her element in the races. Leo.
Yeah, so they've got an amazing... I mean, obviously her love of horses and racing is well documented, but they've got footage from 1991 showing just how invested she was in it and enjoyed the animals and horse racing itself.
I actually think we have that clip, so maybe we could watch that. Can we do that?
Making significant progress, and then Hector Protector Hailsham with a run, 2 on wide outside of the back, back up to
the Queen in person was at Ascot.
Me as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that right?
yeah, near the parade ring.
Yeah.
You missed a bit at the end there. She says, what do I get? And the guy goes, 16. She goes, 16 what? 16 pounds. And she's really happy. She's won 16.
Well, it's about winning. I mean, she doesn't need the money, right?
I need the money, but
also it's 1991. That was before inflation.
That was a lot.
Worth a lot.
Buy a house. But what I also just liked about that clip, I've never even seen the Queen run. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She jumped out of that helicopter, but I've never actually seen her run. So even that was fun to see.
There is something quite charming about it, isn't it? Because you see her as an icon rather than a human being. So when you get these sort of moments that you catch some element of humanity, you can imagine yourself doing that. I mean, not for me for horse racing, but, you know, something equivalent, badminton or something.
Why were you at Ascot?
I was at Ascot because some friends of mine were going, and it's not something I would naturally do. I'm not interested in that kind of thing.
Andrew's changed.
No, I went along, but to be sociable, really.
Right, yeah,
I actually did quite enjoy it. I will confess, although I didn't win.
Right.
So that was a bit upsetting.
Didn't get you 16 quid.
No, I didn't get my 16 quid. So I'm not as good as the Queen at betting.
Right.
I can't pick the winner.
And
So there's no point. We're going to go on now to Thursday's Telegraph. It looks like the Queen could be joining the list of monarchs with their own universities. This is interesting.
Yeah, Britain's bright young things could soon be studying at Queen Elizabeth II University, and Milton Keynes would be their favourite. And this comes from a think tank who's saying we should have a new university named after Queen Elizabeth II. And they're saying that the UK needs 350,000 extra full-time university places. Well, I'm thinking, do we really? I mean, so my thing is here. I would love to. I think it's great, the idea of having a university named after the Queen, honour the Queen, why not? But it does say here, when the Queen ascended the throne in 1952, there were only 18 universities in the UK and 85,000 full-time students. Why not honour her by going back to that? That was about all we needed, because let's face it, universities have become largely, not completely pointless, but many of the courses have become pointless.
They've become, and there's no prestige or cachet in having a university course anymore, and the price of education has gone up, has vastly outpaced inflation as well.
Well, might it not be better to rename a university after her? Would that be a way to do it?
Yeah,
something like that?
A good one.
Well, there's not many. I mean, let's be honest.
There's Oxford and Cambridge, and they've gone woke, haven't they?
They've gone. They're among the worst, I would have to say. So, no, maybe this isn't the best way to commemorate her. To be honest. No. Anyway,
maybe a military academy.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And certainly, is there going to be an issue about it being in Milton Keynes? You know, because it's not a kind of historical town. That's
It's a new town.
Yeah. OK, well, anyway, we're going to finish now. This is a story with the Daily Mail and a personal touch to the late Queen's coffin.
Yeah, so the Queen's coffin was adorned with lavender and rosemary from the Gardens of Windsor and pine from her Scottish home of Balmoral. So, they've taken flowers from all across the United Kingdom. They've got sweet peas, dahlias, phlox, never heard of that, it's got PH. White heather and pine fir from the Aberdeenshire estate as well. And that's partly harking back to the Duke of Edinburgh's coffin. So sweet peas were among our favourite flowers, and were also in the wreath laid on his coffin as well.
Yeah, I like the kind of the detail of this. Flowers are sort of not my expertise, but the Queen apparently had a great eye for detail. I was listening to the military people today saying that. I can well believe it. She was very intelligent, and also I just like the tradition of this. My mum recently, she's president of her local WI. Women's Institute, of course, and she was entering the traditional competitions, and one of them was arranging a group of herbs to their best advantage. So I just love these really old-fashioned kind of things.
That almost sounds quite militaristic.
Yeah.
You want to take the high ground with your sage and thyme.
There's something about all of this and the way that it's played out is that it reminds us that we are actually very good at pageantry and theatre when it comes to this kind of thing. And this was one of the ways that the royal family had to develop. And again, I was talking to Starkey about this at the weekend, and he made this really interesting point that when they did Queen Victoria's coronation, there were no rehearsals. So people were falling down. They got the wrong size ring for her finger, so they were trying to squeeze it on, and she said it was incredibly painful. The guy who read from the book upside down because he was blind and he'd forgotten his glasses. And this was all because it didn't matter, because it was behind closed doors. But of course, with the new modernised monarchy, they're servants to the demos, so you have to open up the gates, we all have to see it, and of course the public, we know what a show looks like. And so these kind of things would have been rehearsed continually, you know?
If you watch that 2006 movie, I don't know if it's definitely true or not, but it's in the film where the Queen Mother is a bit put out because they need to do Diana's funeral, and they say we're going to base it on the rehearsal for your funeral. And so she's not too pleased about it, but they have to rehearse something.
Yeah.
They do, but I mean, I think it's one of the appeals, one of the enduring appeals of the royal family. So there are all these conversations about, how they need to modernise, they need to be up to date. But I think that not just the tourists, but I think people here, what they like about it is that this is archaic.
Yeah.
It's anachronistic. It's a fun anachronism, right?
But they brought it into the Queen came through with the invention of television, and she was the first televised Queen.
Yeah. So people went out to buy TV sets just for this,
specifically to watch the coronation, so she's been very aware of the image that she presents, not just to politicians and to Parliament, but to the world and to the public.
And that sounds cynical, but it's not really.
And it's a hard thing to do. I mean, if you look at other royals, they don't all manage it.
Right, we're going to squeeze in one more story if we can from the Telegraph. This is a phrase we've heard numerous times over the last few days, Nick.
And what is that phrase exactly?
Mother figure to the wall.
Oh, the Nancy Pelosi one. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi has claimed that the Queen was a mother figure to the world, which was actually nice to hear because the New York Times recently put out that terrible article, didn't they, like an hour after the Queen's death, going on about colonialism. So it's nice to see the lefties in America actually respecting the Queen and getting it right.
Well, but I mean, some of the channels and some of the commentary over there has been a bit sniffy, shall we say. So you're right. So maybe, but it is good that the elected representatives are sort of saying something that's a bit more respectful. What do you think, Leo?
Yeah, and I think, America recognises that, the Queen and the royal family and Britain is loved in America.
Yeah.
So even though you're going to get, fringe woke lunatics like the, professors at Carnegie Mellon saying horrific, genuinely just horrible things about the Queen, genuinely disgusting things. Britain and America, we've got a special place in the world together.
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. I mean, you say it is just those crazy academics and activists, but like Nick said, CNN did some sort of pretty disrespectful thing and trying to link her directly with colonialism and this sort of stuff. Actually quite historically illiterate kind of stuff. So maybe Americans sometimes have to,
rein it in a bit.
Rein it in. Anyway, that's all we've got time. Thanks very much to Leo and Nick, and I'm going to be back tomorrow at Headliners at 11 p.m. I'll see you there.